Healthcare, the environment, the recession, Afghanistan, Iraq. President Obama is overseeing two wars while trying to advance an epic domestic agenda, all of which needs the support and approval of Congress. And we're joined now by Congressman Peter Roskam, a Republican from Wheaton. Congressman, thanks for joining us
Delighted.
this morning.
Thanks, Dane.
First of all, how do you assess President Obama's job so far? How do you think he's doing?
Well, I think I give him high marks as it relates to sincerity. I think he really does want to solve these problems. But
policy?
Well, I think the bite-chew ratio is off for the administration.
How so?
Well, I think they're trying to take on so many things, as you just mentioned, and not really following through on them. The stimulus package has underperformed. We saw numbers coming out as it relates to unemployment at 9.5% when the public was told if you pass this, it'll peak at 8%. I think there's a great deal of consternation about the energy agenda that moved through the House last week, and health care is coming up this next couple of weeks in Congress. So what I'm hearing from my district is they personally like the president, but they're becoming more and more concerned about the direction of some of these policies.
Well, let's talk about the direction of the health care program, as you say. That's going to be increasingly debated over the next few weeks. What do you think of what the president has put on the table so far?
Well, I think everybody can come to a common ground, and that is that there are changes that have to happen within the health care system. There are people that are not served that should be. Health care costs are spiraling out at a pace that's not rational. But the question is, how do you move forward? And I think the weakness of the president's approach is what is characterized as a public option health insurance program. And in my view, and in the view of others that have studied it, it will become a plan that we will all end up in. And it won't be an option, but it will ultimately become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And we will find ourselves in a Canadian-style healthcare system if we go this direction. Now, the president gets kind of defensive and a little bit animated when people make those characterizations. But the Lewin Group, for example, has studied this, and they came to the conclusion that 120 million Americans will end up in the public system, and we won't have private health carriers like we do today.
Well, we have a little bit of sound of President Obama talking about that public option. Let's take a look at it now.
We have been working on is the creation of something called the Health Insurance Exchange. And this is going to be a marketplace which would allow you to one-stop shop for health care plans and compare benefits and prices in simple, easy-to-understand language, and then choose the best plan for you. None of these plans would be able to deny coverage on the basis of a pre-existing condition. All of them would include an affordable basic benefit package. If you couldn't afford these plans, then we could provide you a little bit of help.
As you say, the president has been criticized, but I think he makes an interesting defense in this, in that he says you can't have it both ways. We say that government can't run anything, and yet the insurance companies are afraid of having to compete against this program?
Yeah, look, I think he makes a good point in that he's challenging the status quo. I think the weakness of the president's argument, though, is that you are going to have a government program that is going to somehow compete fairly with the private sector. And that's simply not going to happen. It's not going to have the same capital requirements. It's going to be subsidized by Congress over a period of years. And I think any objective look at it says that it will have a disadvantage over the long run in the marketplace. Now, that's not to say that there aren't changes that do need to happen in terms of reforming the insurance system. Insurance companies ought not to be able to cherry pick only the healthiest. They ought not to be able to deny people based on pre-existing conditions. But the name of the game, I think, is to make sure that any change we do make in healthcare enhances the patient-physician relationship and doesn't squander the sort of medical innovation and advancement that we've seen so much in this country.
About a minute left. Let's talk about something that passed just recently, cap and trade. Is that in fact going to reduce emissions?
Well, the cap and trade is a huge energy tax that I heard from my district on about a 10-to-1 ratio. My constituents weren't in favor of it because of the crushing energy costs. $3,100 per family of four increased costs for them based on an MIT study on this bill. I think that we can do better. We've got to seriously look at environmental stewardship, but I think the cap and trade bill as passed isn't ultimately going to be helpful.
And very quickly, with the Democrats having trouble getting anything through Springfield right now, and the party seemingly self-immolating, do you think Republicans have a window of opportunity here, or are there just not enough strong candidates on the Republican side?
No, I think there's some sleepers that are out there. I think you're going to see a strong ticket in 2010 if what I'm sensing is accurate, I think there's a lot of folks who are looking at the 2010 election as a way to have a different voice out there.
All right, Congressman Peter Roskam, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
You.